I'm AJ Bianco, host of Reflect Ed, a part of the Education Podcast Network. Just like the show you're listening to now, shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of My EdTech Life. Guys, I am so excited to be here with you guys and honored again. As always, I took a long break. It was a nice hiatus to kind of rest, relax, dip my toes and fingers into other things and continue my learning. But I am so excited to be back here behind this microphone, bringing you some great shows with some amazing guests that are going to bring you some amazing knowledge bombs that they're going to be dropping today. So it is a pleasure and an honor to be back with you here today, and a pleasure and an honor to have such a wonderful guest, a gentleman who I have followed for a very long time. And at TCCA this last year, I had the opportunity to meet him in real life, and we just hit it off. I got to see a presentation that he did on branding, which is what we will be getting into in just a second. But I definitely want to introduce you to the one and only, the Wright leader, Mr. Vernon Wright himself. Vernon, how are you this evening?
Well, I will tell you, I am blessed beyond measure, so immensely humbled, honored, and grateful to be with you all here today on this episode. And I just want to say here real quick, for anyone that is on here watching live, or if you say, Vernon, I missed it for whatever reason, I'm watching on replay. There is no distance in space and time. It is an honor. Thank you to be here with you and to not only learn with you, but to learn from you.
Oh my goodness, it is just wonderful, wonderful. And thank you so much to AJ. I see AJ, my boy AJ, who's also an amazing podcaster. I see Amanda Macias. Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Amanda, for being here. And yes, did I win the YouTube lottery? I hope you did, my friend, because today's show, you're definitely going to come out of here a winner. I promise you, with everything that we're going to be talking about. So guys, again, it's a pleasure. And if you can, those of you that are participating in the comments, if you use hashtag PLF in all caps, you are going to be entered in a drawing to win some of my new swag stickers. So just in case, here you go. These are the new stickers for the new branding that we have. So these will be sent your way. So make sure you use hashtag PLF in all caps, and we'll definitely get you into the drawing. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk to my main man, Mr. Zero Apology Zone himself. We're going to talk to Mr. Vernon Wright. So Vernon, again, a pleasure and an honor for you to be here. And before we get started and talking about today's topic about the importance of branding and really putting yourself out there, I am always intrigued and I always love to hear my guests' origin stories per se, because to me, people that I bring on here are people that I look up to, that are pretty much, to me, I look up to them in kind of that superhero status because of the amazing work that you do. And as you know, every superhero has an origin story. So I want to know a little bit about your origin story, if you don't mind. So for some of our viewers, some of our listeners that may not be familiar with your work, if you can give us a little brief bio as far as your context and education, and just lead into, how did you land in education? Where did that passion come from?
Yeah, well, what an honor it is. And let me just say this here real quick before we get started. It is an honor to be here on My EdTech Live. What an honor. So gracious. Thank you for the invitation. Of course, the name is Vernon Wright, as I tell folks, unless somebody changed it on the birth certificate and they didn't tell me. The name is Vernon Wright, speaker, author, consultant, leader. And interestingly enough, my bachelor's degree is in economics and finance, bachelor's of business administration, a BBA. And after graduation, got out into this thing called the real world. and did that for a little bit. Got to a point to where a company I was at, they said, "Hey, if you want to go ahead and move to the next level, you need to get an MBA." And I was like, "Okay, well, I could go ahead and get an MBA." I was working with a small team of people, and most of them, not all of them, but most of them had their MBAs, and I just wasn't really jazzed about an MBA at the time, that time of my life, and so I had always wanted to go ahead and be before people in kind of a trainer kind of sense. And I said, well, you know what? Let me jump over into education. And kind of the plan was back then to just kind of do education for a year or two, maybe 2 or 3 years, and figure out what I wanted to do when I quote unquote grew up, and then go off in that direction. But how many of you know that there's always a plan, and God really truly had a plan for me, and I'm so thankful about that. Got into education in this very, very, very small city that many of you have probably never heard of, called Dallas, Texas. Yes, I'm being facetious there. And at the time, of course, if you were a job changer, you went through their program, which was kind of what I call the summer boot camp. And you went through that for about 3 months. And at the end of 3 months, you were assigned to a school. And of course, as they say in Texas, everything is bigger in Texas. And so back then in those days, it's been many, many years ago, there were about 230 of us in our, if you want to call it, summer boot camp training. And so got into that, into teaching, and did that for about a year or two. And I was thinking, of course, about my next step and what I was going to do. And about that year two, year three mark, I was approached about this little thing called teacher leadership, becoming a teacher leader. And I was kind of like, okay, well, this is okay, but still not really jazzed about leadership. And I just want to say this here real quick, and of course, those of you that are here, that are watching this either live or on replay, thank you. I'm so humbled and honored to be with you, and certainly for me to give you the opportunity to learn, and for me to learn from you. And so I want to make your time worth it. So if you have something to take notes with, this would be a good time to get it ready, because I'm getting ready to drop, of course, one of the right pro tips, hashtag the right pro tips there. And that is this: at that 3 year mark or so, there was a person in my life that I was working with. And how many of you know that we have this thing that I refer to as a living angel? And I had one of those living angels, I've had several of them in my life, come up to me and say, Mr. Wright, there's more. You're doing great at teaching. We really like the contributions you're doing, but there's more. And I was kind of like, okay, thanks, but no thanks. And I know I shared this on George Kouros's podcast, but it kind of reminds me of that song from the 80s, for those of you that are classic enough. Notice I didn't say old enough. Classic enough to remember the 80s. There was this band called The Flock of Seagulls, and they had this song called I Ran. And so for a part of my life, that was one of my theme songs, was I Ran. And then one day I decided to quit running. And long story short, I had some other individuals, other angels in my life that said, you know what, it's time. And I want to say this here real quick, because this is the way it happened for me in my life. And certainly it's not exclusive. What I have learned is not exclusive just to me, and what I've experienced is not exclusive to me. I know there are many people out there watching or listening here, and this may be their experience or something similar to it. But I reached kind of a crossroads in my life where I was, of course, obviously thinking about the next level. And my late father, and a shout out to my late father, who I know is watching from heaven, he was kind of on me about going back to school and getting my master's degree in leadership. And I was kind of like, okay, well, thanks, Dad. Thanks. I'll think about it. I'm busy. I'm doing some other things. And he just wouldn't stop. Right? He was persistent about it. And one day, had an administrator say, you know what, it's time for you to go back to school. And I got to say this because it's amazing. It's amazing. No matter how many times I've told this story, it's amazing. And it's still such a wonder and a blessing to me. My late father and that administrator, who was my administrator at the time, never met. They never knew each other. But when you get to a point in your life where you get confirmation from two people who have never met each other, they've never talked, they're not able to get together and say, yes, so you say this at this point, and then at this point, I'll say this. Like there was none of that. And when I had that moment, I said, you know what? This is it. And I surrender, but not surrender in a bad way. Let me reframe something here, right here. And this is a great place to take notes if you haven't already. I didn't surrender to something bad. I surrendered to something good. Let me say that again in case folks missed that. I didn't surrender to something bad, because when we say surrender, that typically has a negative connotation. Ooh, I surrendered. But I surrendered to something good. Dare I say I submitted to something great. And let me go ahead and do another throwback. I've mentioned this on other podcasts before. There used to be a show back in the day, for those of us that are classic. There used to be a show back in the day called Let's Make a Deal. And behind each of the doors, you could have these really cool prizes, but you didn't know until you said, I'll take door number 2. I'll take door number 1, right? In my life, from that point, the point at which I surrendered, didn't surrender to something bad, but I surrendered to something good. Excuse me. Dare I say great? I submitted to something great. And that great thing was what you all see today. And I'm so humbled and I'm so honored and I'm so grateful. And I always want to let people know, people say, well, man, Vernon, you've accomplished this, you've accomplished that. It's great. And this is so awesome. And I always want to let people know I give all of my honor, glory, and praise to God, because God is the reason why I have a platform or any of this, folks. Of course, those that have seen me speak in person, you have, sir. You have seen visual proof of where I started with 15 followers on Twitter, folks. 15. And hopefully sometime this year, we'll go ahead and we'll reach 10,000. But to be looking at 10,000 in the near future, and to have looked back and seen where I started. And I saw where I started at 15 followers. And I want to say this here real quick. Sometimes, and I'm not the first person to say this, okay? So someone said, well, Vernon got on here and he would say that he was the first person to say it. I did not say that. But it bears repeating. Sometimes we get so busy in the midst of doing things and achieving and accomplishing that we never stop to take a look back and to ask ourselves, where did I come from? Where did I start it? And here's another little pro tip. You guys are great, great audience. You're having a great time. Thank you so much for letting me be thought partners with all of you, whether you're watching live again or you're watching on replay. Another little pro tip here for you. Some of you have this through Google Photos. Some of you have it through Facebook. But I am a huge fan of a timeline feature. Of course, it's called different things on different applications. But when you're able to pick up your phone and see where you were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Oh my goodness, folks. Oh my goodness. And I will tell you a little bit about myself, right? Telling you a little bit about myself. I have mine set up where each day it pops up with memories from back in my past to remind me from where I have come from. And I want to say this one last thing here real quick before we move on, because I know we have other things that we want to talk about. I gave a shout out to my dad, my late father, great man. Give a shout out to my mom. And she says this all of the time, and she's so great. So a shout out to her. We of course call her Mama Wright, and she often says this. She says, do not despise the days of small beginnings. Which she told me that for years, and then I found out later on she had taken it from the Bible. So, but do not despise the days of small beginnings. So, from a small beginning, guess what? I made my ed tech life. I think I've won the lottery.
Wow, and that is so powerful, Vernon. And this is just really the essence of what your presentation was about. When I saw you speak in person, I mean, the whole room, I mean, it was full. People were captivated with your story, and we were talking a little bit about this, prior to the show, as far as your branding, your power that you have is really who you are. And right now, you're showing us just your origin, where you're coming from, that passion, and then, of course, you're telling us your story along the way that, I mean, for me, it even got me thinking and reflecting on where I was a year ago, where I was on April 10th, 2020, when I first started this podcast. And now we're on April 7th, 2022, almost 2 years, Vernon. And I get the pleasure to have you back as my comeback show. And just to see that growth and be able to see the things that have changed, it's just wonderful. And you're absolutely right. Sometimes we don't take the time to think about where we are because life flies so fast and we want to catch up to, the great ones, the ones that have so many followers and so on. But like you said, it starts from small beginnings. That's so
Yeah,
powerful.
15 followers, folks. And I will tell you, and you might be out there right now saying, you know what, Vernon, I have 15 followers. I have maybe, and I got to this point and I thought I was big stuff, folks. So you might be in this spot. I got to 100 followers and I said, wow, like I have made it. 100 followers, that's it. Right. And, but what I learned was this, and another great place to take notes if you aren't already. Now, we've already talked about this multiple times in this episode. You may have missed it. You may have said, wow, I missed that. It was subtle. You have mentioned it multiple times. Could you tell us again? We've got you covered. Okay. And that simply is this. What I didn't realize was that I was telling a story. I was telling a story. I was telling my story, but I just didn't really think about it that way. And then a little bit later down the road, I thought, well, who would want to hear what I have to say, right? What kind of voice or authority am I? And those of you that have been longtime followers of mine, you know that at one point in time, shout out to Rich Allen, another angel in my life. What a phenomenal man. What a great man up in the New Jersey area. Rich, shout out to you, sir, Rich Allen. Great, great, great man. And I want to say this too. If you would hear me talk about Rich, and you would probably not realize that Rich and I are kind of like opposites. So of course you see me and I am I guess as some folks would say vertically challenged. We'll say it that way, right? And Rich is this super tall. I want to say he's probably like 6'4", 6'5", tall, older, Caucasian gentleman. And when you see both of us together, we kind of look like we're the polar opposites. But when you look beyond and you go beyond the physical appearance and you look at how our brains think and how our souls think and how our spirits are in alignment, I must tell you that my path crossing his path, no coincidence. So I tell you guys a little story. Do we have time for a quick little story?
Yes, we do, sir.
Kind of a
Yes, we
quick
do.
little story, right? So I was this has been years ago, right? Been years ago. And so I was in those days, making my rounds during the day from one place to another place. And, I had a little time, I believe it was probably like during a little lunch break or whatever. And I was making my rounds from one place to another, just a typical day, right? Typical day in the neighborhood. And so, I pull up my YouTube and I'm going through there and I see this outfit called Disrupted TV. It's Disrupted. Let me look at what they're doing here on Disrupted TV. And I saw some names that I knew. Interestingly enough, Tara M. Martin, who is out there, a good friend of mine out there with DBC, Dave Burgess, some other people I saw in there, and I was like, wow, these people are really cool. And I had this thought, right? And this thought was, I could be one of the hosts on there. And so I could have my own show. And so I had this moment of I guess we call it courage, In some ways, I was kind of like, oh my goodness, what was I thinking? And so I decided to just send a message to who I later found out was Rich Allen. To back then, it was just the account of Disrupted TV. And then, just kind of brief description. My name is Vernon Wright. Here's who I am. This is what I think I can do. I just like to talk to you. And so I sent it off and I thought, well, I'll never get an answer. I'll never get a response to this. But I will be able to say that I sent the message, right? How many of you have been in that spot where you're like, you know what? I just feel like I'm moved to reach out to this person or to call this person or to text this person or to do something, to take some kind of action, right? And that's another little pro tip. My life changed when I became a person that took action. Let me say that again. My life changed when I became a person that took action. And I want to say this also too, and I mentioned this to a very, very close friend. She might be watching this either live or on replay, but I mentioned this to her a few days ago. She knows who she is. I said, if and we were talking about a certain area of my life, and I said, if my life is going to change in this area, then I have to change. Let me say that one again. If my life in a certain area is going to change, then I have to change. Now, let me say that one more time, a third time, right? Because repetition is our friend. If in a certain area, if my life is going to change, then I have to change. And so, in order to change, that means I have to take action. And so, I took this action and I sent this message, and I thought, oh, yeah, I'll never hear anything back. I was able to say I did take action, I did follow through. And so, lo and behold, less than 24 hours later, I get a reply, and I'm like, SpaghettiOs. That's a little 70s reference there about SpaghettiOs. Some of you may not know what that is. You may have to Google that one. But they used to come in a can. Yes, greatness. But anyway, and so I was kind of like, SpaghettiOs. Like, what do I do now? Like, this person responded. And so person gave me their phone number, who of course later on turned out to be Rich Allen. So I call him up and he says, hey, got your text message, got your DM or whatever, so forth and so on. Let's talk. And he said, I tell you what, he said, tell me about the concept of what your show would be about. We started talking and I won't say how long, but after a good little while, I was thinking to myself, I think it clicks with this guy. I think this guy and I click. And so this is what he says to me. And so I'm feeling really good. We get to the end of the conversation. He says, you know what, Vernon, here's what we're going to do. He said, go ahead and do a prototype. And I want you to film a prototype. And I want you to just do a quick little segment. It doesn't have to be anything really, really long, just kind of an intro to what your show would be about. And then after you film it, I want you to email it to me, send it to me, and I'll watch it and then we'll review it. And I was so pumped up and I was so excited. I said, absolutely, I'm game. He said, let's talk again in 7 days. Yes, sir. Hung up the phone. And then I realized, and those of you that may know Dave Burgess's story, after he committed to doing a PD, like a district level PD for his whole district many, many, many years ago, back when Dave was still in the classroom, I had a similar moment where I got off the phone and I was like, what in the world did I just commit myself to? What in the world did I just do? Oh my goodness. I don't have video lighting equipment. I don't have I don't have anything. And I just committed myself to recording an episode. What in the world was I thinking? And so I put together that prototype. I often tell people, including my daughter, she's a little older now, but back in those days, I was like, this is so horrible. YouTube should take this off of YouTube. It is so horrible. But and interestingly enough, that's one of the ones that has the most replays of the videos I have out there. But anyway, that's where I started. But I want to say this. And again, I'm not the first person to say this, but I want to say it. If you don't start, you'll never reach the goal. If you don't start, you will never reach the goal. But I want to go back to let's make a deal as well. I wanted all of the cool stuff behind door number 2 on Let's Make a Deal. I wanted zeroapologyzone.com. If you haven't been there, check it out, my online apparel store. I wouldn't have hashtag the right pro tips. I wouldn't have hashtag the right speaker. I wouldn't have @ the right leader. I wouldn't have the right leader.com. I wouldn't have all of these different things. I wouldn't have, and think about this, folks, unless I had done that first prototype video with Rich. And again, thank you, Rich Allen. I've said this to you many times in private and some as well in public. Thank you, one of the angels in my life. I wouldn't have ever been a speaker at TCEA. And let me also go ahead and share this for those that follow me. You may notice that the video that is pinned at the top of my feed was that with the great, awesome Tom Murray. Never would have had a chance to do a leadership minute with Tom Murray. And let me say this, an interesting story there, right? Just tell another little story about that with Tom Murray. Again, folks, all because I took action. I didn't know all of the steps. I didn't know all of how it was going to play out. I didn't know any of that. I don't know how the rest of my life will play out. But I was in faith. I took action in faith. So met Rich, did that prototype video. Of course, each video got better and it got better and it got better. And once I took action, different people started coming into my life. Hey, Vernon, did you know you could do this? Did you know you could do this? Hey, you could do this. You could do that. I want to be a guest. I went from doing solo episodes to doing episodes like this, where you actually have a guest. And so it's so gracious of God to just as I started taking steps in faith to open doors. And so then all of those things became available to me. But had I not taken action, none of those things would have been made available to me. But sometimes when we take action, we don't necessarily know all of the steps. But I want to say this, folks, when you take action in faith, it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing. And when you know that you are called, there's a calling and a purpose on your life to fulfill it. Dare I say, a destiny awaits you. And wow, I could go on and on and on, but we'll leave it for there.
Man, that is so powerful. I mean, right now I'm taking down notes. And again, this is the way the presentation was. And so for those of you that aren't taking notes, this is definitely going to be a show for you to replay and replay several times over because you're definitely getting some knowledge bombs here today from Vernon. So Vernon, you're telling this amazing story, your backstory and how everything that you did, you learned a little bit along the way. And like you said, one of the things that I loved is you described how, hey, I've never done this and how did I get myself into this? But you just went ahead and did it. But the fact that you were also surrounded by other people that were willing to help you to succeed as well and just make suggestions or share tools with you, and now you continue to progress along the way. How important is this now that you've got the branding? You mentioned several times you've got, your Instagram, all of those things tied together. I see you as being very authentic. And I think that's something that is very important nowadays because as you can see, there are several influencers that are out there that sometimes, they're powerful in that they have a huge following. They're experts, maybe something in their field, but then at the same time, sometimes you get to meet them and it's like, oh, like, well, this doesn't match up with the person that
Right.
that I see. And
Right.
for me, from that first moment when I got to see you and I went up to you, I was like, this gentleman right here, this is a gentleman who is the same, and here's what surprised me the most. The fact that you knew who I was, and I was like,
Who does not
Vernon,
know who
I was
you
like,
are, man? You're like,
I
you're a superstar.
I was like, Vernon Wright knew, and we shook hands and we hit it off, and I was like, man, this gentleman here is so genuine and so authentic. Tell me a little bit more, just elaborate a little bit more for any teachers that are out there or any people that would love to go into this leadership role or to these speaking roles and maybe hesitant. They've got that imposter syndrome. What are some of the ways that being authentic can help them and opening doors and maybe not to compare themselves to others.
Yeah, this takes me back to, and I feel compelled to share this story. Going back many ways ago, before I had a little bit of gray in my beard, as we said, I was having this conversation with someone here this past weekend, a little bit of salt and pepper there on the beard. But going back many, many years ago, I had just come out of an administrative internship. So I did that for about a year and a half as an administrative intern. Really enjoyed that. Opportunity came up for me to go ahead and go to the next level in my leadership career beyond that internship. And I remember sitting down this interview, right? So picture me back in those days, and I had a little bit more hair on the top of my head. But picture me back in those days, and I'm sitting down in this office, and there was a panel of about 4 people on this interview panel. They asked me a variety of different questions, different leadership types of questions, and we got to the very end, right? And if you haven't taken notes, folks, this is a great place to take notes. Great place to take notes. And they asked me, they said, Mr. Wright, how do you want people here at this school to know you? How should they know you after having worked with you? What would they say about you? How would you describe yourself? All of these were questions, right? All wrapped up into one question, and but from different perspectives, but really asking the same thing, but from different angles. And I simply said this, and again, a great place to take notes. I said, I'm going to give you 3 adjectives. I am real, competent, and caring. And let me repeat that for you one more time, folks, if you're taking notes at home. Real, competent, and caring. Real, competent, and caring, because repetition is our friend. Real, competent, and caring. And they said, well, you know what? That's great, Mr. Wright. That they were a little shocked by that. Explain what each of those means. And I said, well, real. And I said, on the streets, they have a saying that real recognize real, right? And I say in my circles that, respect on the real, right? Uh, when we say the term real, obviously the antithesis, the opposite of fake. Authenticity, folks. And I want to say this here real quick before I get into the other two. Real, competent, and caring are all 3, in case you're wondering. Didn't catch that the first time. Real, competent, caring. Right now, I'm a brand. Right now, you're a brand that you're watching this. And people need to know that you're authentic. It doesn't have to, they don't have to think that you're perfect, but they have to know, right? And this was so huge for me when I started to go into the different levels of leadership. I needed the people to know that when Vernon Wright talks to me, he's telling me the true story. As much as he can tell me within whatever the context is, he's telling me the true story. His desire is to tell me the true story. He's telling me the true story. He's being authentic with me. And so when I say real, that really is the encapsulation of all that. Real, competent, and caring. So then we move to the second word, which is competent. And I told the folks, I said, I don't know everything. I don't profess to know everything, but I am a lifelong learner. And I want to say this here real quick, folks. For your personal and professional lives, become a lifelong learner. Never be the person that says, I've learned everything. I don't have anything else to learn. No, 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 no. 1,000, as one of my mentors says, 1,000 times no. Become a lifelong learner. And let me throw in this little pro tip. When you have the opportunity, spend quality time with other lifelong learners. You will elevate yourself. Iron sharpens iron, as some folks say. So one person sharpens another. So real, competent, caring. And so getting into the competent piece, I said, well, I don't know everything. I don't profess to know everything, but here's what I do know. Although I don't know everything, I do know some things. And if I know some things, I have a base or a foundation. Now, I didn't know years later, once I came across and my path crossed with Sarah Thomas, Dr. Sarah Thomas, the founder of EduMatch. Shout out to her, Dr. Sarah Thomas. I didn't understand until later, right, with that piece of the competence part, that it would be really difficult for someone to have confidence in whomever their leader is if they don't see them as competent. Let me say that one more time because you may have missed that. It's really difficult. I don't want to say impossible because you might be someone who's able to do this, but it's challenging. It's difficult to have confidence in someone if you don't see them as being competent. And I want you to test me out on this. And I want you to think about someone that you really see as someone that you have confidence in. And I want you to kind of cross check, cross reference, and ask yourself, has that person demonstrated competence? Doesn't mean they know everything, but do they know some things? And then flip that around and say, if the person's demonstrated competence, do I have confidence in them? And then the last part, which is the part that really is the glue that brings all of it together, which is caring. And I wanted people to know that at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, and all points in between, Vernon Wright knew this was years before @the right leader across all socials, by the way, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Clubhouse. All right. @the right leader. That's right with a W, right? That's a branding strategy right there. In case you guys missed that and you weren't in the session at GCA. I know we had the fire marshal kick some people out. I'm sorry about that, folks. I can't do anything about that once we reach building capacity or room capacity. But one of the things I did share was get a tagline, a handle, if you will, on social media that is across all of the different platforms if you can get it. So I will tell you what I did. Had this idea sitting at home one day with my mind on my business and my business on my mind. Some of you all will get that. You'll get that little allusion there, that little reference. If not, someone will help you out with that and you'll get that one. But the idea was, you know what? Become the right leader. Wright with a W. I'd always been teased about having the last name Wright. Well, since your last name's Wright, you must always be right. Right. Grew up with that my whole life. And I said, well, you know what? Let me just twist this around and say the right leader. And so then I checked to see, is it on Twitter? Is it on Instagram? Is it on Facebook? Is it on YouTube? Is it on, all of the different social media channels, the major ones, right? And I didn't tell anybody. So if you come up with some unique handle, folks, don't tell everybody because they may go out and try to steal it from you and register that handle first. So, what you come up with, what you believe is a unique handle, start checking it across the social media platforms. And I did that for this reason, to make sure that it was easiest as possible for people to get in contact with my work. And that really brings in that people term or really aspect, really brings all of it together. And that's the caring part, because I said real competent caring. That's the glue. That it's all about people, folks. It's all about people. It doesn't matter what your box is, how high or how low your box is on an organizational chart. It doesn't matter whether you have a reserved parking spot. Folks, I've had a reserved parking spot. I've had parking spots that weren't reserved. I've had both of them, folks. I've had business cards. I've not had business cards. I've had all of it. I'm telling you, it is about people. So I wanted people to know that. But let me say this here real quick. Another little pro tip, because I'm checking my time here and I know we're running out of time. Oh my goodness. Where did the time go? It's going by so fast, right? But I want to say this, and this ties in with authenticity. People have to see you as someone they can trust. Let me say that again, folks, because that one is huge. It's huge. It's huge. It is huge. People have to see you as someone they can trust. And this past weekend, I was at a country and Western event. I know y'all would be like, wow, Vernon, country and Western. Yeah, if you follow me on Instagram, you may have caught on my IG stories a picture of me wearing a cowboy hat. Yeah, I got that. I decided not to wear that for this episode, but I have that too. All right. But I was at a music event and I was talking to a guy, and we were sitting down at this table and we were kind of taking in all of the sights or whatever of this country music concert. And we were talking about sales, because I believe, like Zig Ziglar said many, many years ago, the late, great Zig Ziglar, and I'm paraphrasing, no matter what business you're in sales. no matter what business you're in. Well, Vernon, I'm a teacher, I'm an administrator. I don't really sell. Yes, you do sell. You sell yourself. And guess what, folks? And here's another pro tip. Your brand is an extension of who you are. So whoever you are, you're really selling your brand. Let me say that again. Whoever you are, you're really selling your brand. And we were talking about how when people trust you, and in the world of sales, everyone's trying to get the lowest sale, right? The lowest price for a product. And I've got the lowest bid, and I've got the lowest bid, right? Everyone's trying to outbid each other. But one of the things that I've seen over the years, and I've even experienced in my own life, I've passed up buying something that was cheaper and have spent more money with someone I trusted, someone that I knew would take care of me if there was an issue, someone that I knew would treat me right and not lie to me. And let me say this, and this is something called a value proposition. It was worth it to me to spend more to have peace. Peace of my mind, peace of my heart, peace of my soul, peace of my spirit. It was worth the little extra for me to be at peace. But really, I want to flip that around, because that was my experience as an end user, as a customer, as a client. If I flip that around in the people that I'm working with, and I've so blessed, immensely blessed to have done consulting with different groups. District that I did some consulting with out in California. If those guys are watching, hey, had a great time out in California this summer. Hope to visit you guys again out there. Great weather out there, folks. Great weather. It's not quite like it is here in Texas, right? And of course, that was back in the summer, so it was like 105, 110, or whatever. So touchdown in California, I was like, yes, it's cooler. It's much better. But I wanted to say this. If people know, obviously, that you sell a product or you sell a service or you're selling something, but if people know at the base of it, you know what? Vernon's somebody I can trust. I know Vernon will tell me what's right. I know that Vernon is not just trying to get my money or get something from me. I mentor some football players at the collegiate level, and one of the things that we talk to them about from time to time are the two words transformational and transactional. And I want to go ahead and say that in terms of branding, is your brand something that's transactional? In other words, there's a transaction that takes place with people, and then you're like, you know what, I've forgotten you. Or is it transformational? So even after maybe a transaction, maybe even after an exchange, and how many of you know that there's always an exchange? Maybe even after an exchange, people come back to your brand and they say, you know what? Your brand connected. I connected with your brand connected with me. I was moved by your brand. When I think about your brand, the story of your brand has some similarities to my life. That's when we reach this point where the brand is so strong, because we have what's called a brand identity. We could take much longer and do like a master class on branding, just on a few different pieces. But I want to say this, and we talked about this too before we started taping in the episode, and such an honor, let me say this again, to be with you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think, like I said before, I think that I've won the My Ed Tech Life lottery. I've won the YouTube lottery by being on here on your show. What a great experience. Sometimes we think about what are all of the specifics that we need to do about a brand, right? Like, do I have a hashtag? Do I have my social media handle? Is my social media handle the same across all the social media platforms? And what is my brand's identity? And do I have my logo? Do I have my insignia? Do I have all these different things? And those things have a place, folks. They absolutely do. Those of you that were in my session, you saw how literally once upon a time at my kitchen table with a 70-cent spiral and a pencil, my daughter and I started what is now zeroapologiezone.com, but we started with a 70-cent spiral, folks, and a pencil. No computer designs, no website, like none of that, folks. No stickers, like none of that. But I sat at that kitchen table and I told her that, I had a dream. And that was shortly after in my life. I had gone through a divorce. I had gone through some other life changes, and but I had faith and I had a dream back in those days, and it was absolutely powerful, so very powerful. But when people trust you, and so I want to say this here right now, because wherever you are right now, folks, whether you believe it or not, you're a brand. Let me say that again. You are a brand right now. Wherever you are right now, whatever, you're a brand. And the number one question I have to ask, there are other questions people could ask. Certainly, I do not pretend by any means to say that I have exclusivity on all knowledge around branding. Absolutely not. 1,000 times no. No, no, no. 1,000 times no. But here's what I do know. I do know that when it comes to brands and branding, people have to trust you. People have to identify with you. So I want to say this. I'm gonna say a couple of things here real quick as we get ready to close out. Number one, I want you to ask yourself: can people trust you, and can people trust your brand? Do people associate trust with your brand? Another little bonus here: do people associate, which is what I want people to associate with my brand? Part of one of the things I want people to associate with my brand. Part of the things. Does my brand stand for the underdog? Does my brand stand for those that don't have a voice? Does my brand stand for those that have a voice but are afraid to speak? And back in those early days, people would often ask me, what is zeroapologyzone.com? Like, what is that about? And I would tell them that we're for those that don't have a voice. We're for those that have a voice but are afraid to speak up. And we do that with Zero Apologies. But I also want to go ahead and give you something to think about. There are many people out there that play basketball, but there are a lot of people out there that don't play basketball. But how many people are wearing Air Jordan sneakers? The power of a brand. Not because everybody likes playing basketball, but because the brand connected with people and their lives.
Wow. Powerful stuff, Vernon. I mean, just the notes that I have here and all of these points. I'm just so excited because I'm definitely going to have a lot of wonderful stuff to put up on social media. And again, this was definitely a master class in branding, believe it or not. So anybody that's listening and anybody that's interested in branding, please make sure that you listen to this episode on replay. You catch it on YouTube, and make sure that you follow me on social media as I put up some of these little golden nuggets. You know, the power that Vernon brought today is just. I learned so much today, and I am in awe of just everything that I was able to soak up. So, Vernon, just thank you. I appreciate your time, sir. Thank you so much for just your gentleness, your caring, your authenticity, humility, the person that you are. Keep doing what you're doing, my friend, because you're doing some amazing things. And I do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to, just having this honor of being able to, interview you as I'm back. And it's just really exciting. And I'm glad to see everybody that's here. And, I definitely going to take this to another level with everything that you've shared with me today. So thank you so much. Please make sure, guys, that you follow Vernon on his website. I will publish all links and all contacts. You will see it on the pod page, and you will get the show notes. You'll get all those links too as well. Make sure you follow him on social media, because he is always sharing some great stuff and the work that he's doing. And you definitely get to see the authenticity and just the genuineness and the caring and everything that's there put into practice in this and packaged up in this gentleman, which is amazing. So Vernon, again, thank you so much. And if you'd like, please make sure that you share again with our audience where they can reach you at, your socials, anything you'd like to share, maybe any upcoming events. Please feel free to take this time right now to share anything.
Absolutely. Well, again, what an honor it is to be here with you all again. Of course, as you see there on your screen, the name is Vernon Wright, @ the Right Leader. That is right with a W across all socials. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Clubhouse, what have you, @ the right leader across the socials. Want to say this too. If you're say, Vernon, I'm looking for a one-stop shop where I can find not only those things on how to connect with you on the socials and find out about zeroapologieZone.com and check out your online apparel, but also see some of your other work. Also see where you're going to be speaking at next, which will be coming up this summer. So honored to be able to do that. And that'll be coming up in the month of June. Go to my link tree. Go to my link tree. That has everything, folks. And you'll say, well, Vernon, where is your link tree? Go to my Twitter profile @ the right leader. And it is the first thing in my bio, which is my link tree. If you've been to Linktree before, just put /the right leader. It will take you to it. If you've never been to Linktree and you say, Vernon, Linktree is new to me. I feel like I'm the only person that doesn't know about Linktree. That's okay. I was in that spot at one point in my life too. Just go to Linktree by typing linktr.ee/the right leader, and it will take you there. Linktree has all of the links and some stuff that we haven't mentioned before, such as blogs and other writings and things that I've done. So what a privilege, what an honor to be here with you all and to share. And my hope and my desire is this, folks, that I have shared something, just one thing, if nothing else, that I've shared at least one thing that has made your time worth it in this episode. Just hopefully one thing. I hope that maybe you've left with many things, but if nothing else, if I've left with just one thing that has made this episode worth your time, then I have done my job. I am so humbled, privileged, and honored to have been here with you again. Vernon Wright @ the right leader, and we will see you on Twitter and on the socials.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, my friend. And I'm definitely leaving here with 20 points. I took down my notes right here. So 20 points that I learned today that I'm definitely going to go back and compare to what I'm doing, and just an ability to reflect and, just kind of take it from there one step at a time. And to all our audience members that saw us live, I know, Thursday might have been, a little, just because there's Twitter chats, there's everything going on. Thank you guys who joined us. But more than anything, those of you that are catching us on the replay, thank you so much, as always, for your support. Thank you so much for following us on all social media. Thank you for your support on our pod page. Thank you for your support on our blogging too, as well, and everything. And we're back, and we're definitely bringing you the best, as always, as that's always my goal, to give you the best of me and bring you some wonderful education leaders, tech leaders, creators that are here to share their knowledge with you and to help you continue to grow. That way we can continue to connect one show at a time. So thank you, my friends, and we will see you next week right here on My Ed Tech Live. But as always, my friends, don't forget, stay techie.